Hi everyone, I'm Georgina Gorman and welcome to FeForte. Our mission is to build female resilience using science and philosophy. One of our key principles at FeForte to help build resilience is to share knowledge, and today's conversation is one of the ways that we do that. We hold these conversations regularly and cover many topics, and they'll either be recorded sessions or live events. You'll hear personal stories of challenge and resilience. Hear from women in particular roles or industries who can share their advice and wisdom, and you'll also hear from scientists and experts about the ways that we can build resilience and flourish. Make sure to sign up to our mailing list or follow us on social media to be the first to know about upcoming events. Our other key principles to build resilience are to create community and to change habits. To create community, we have established a group where women of all backgrounds and experiences can come together, where members network, support, and mentor each other. Finally, we build resilience through changing habits, and you'll learn 3 key habits for resilience on any of our training courses. Check out our website to learn more. Without further delay, welcome to today's conversation with Sarah Williams-Gardner. Sarah gives us an interesting insight into her career, the obstacles that she's overcome, and how she found resilience in tough moments. As a warning, we will be discussing cancer and specifically breast cancer during today's conversation. I'll hand over to Jackie to introduce and tell us more.
Welcome everybody. I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker. Her name is Sarah Williams-Gardner, who I met many years ago and who has become a great friend and colleague. When I first met her, she was Government Affairs Director at IBM, having had a successful career there for many years. One of her great strengths is combining commerciality with relationships, and she's really got an experience of the sharp end of business, but she's also going to be talking to us today about a personal experience that was quite a hard one, but there's a really interesting dimension between work and personal experience, and really how that makes you feel, a personal journey. We met through Opportunity Now, which is part of Business in the Community, where Sarah took a sabbatical from IBM and became CEO, and that was quite a journey too. She's a founding member of Stalin Bank, which is doing really well, I believe. And she lives in Hertfordshire and Swansea. She co-locates between the two with her lovely husband, Richard. They have a farm, and she has 2 almost grown-up boys, one of whom's at university. We also both share a love of gun dogs and have had dogs called Digby. So without more ado, I'm going to ask Sarah to tell us a little about her personal journey.
Jackie, thank you. It is a huge privilege, and as you quite rightly say, we've known each other for many years now, 10, 15 years, and you have been a great work colleague, a great challenge, and also become a good friend. So it's a privilege to have this conversation with you today, because you have been through some of my journey with me. My story starts really when I left school at a tender old age of 17, having retaken what were then O-levels. I wasn't massively academic, and I know you'll always tell me off for being negative, but in hindsight and later on, I realised that my sort of understanding at school or my ability to engage was due to dyslexia. Something that, having had my own children diagnosed, I realised that I was blessed with myself. And I say that because I do think dyslexia is a gift. And dyslexia in the world that we're living in is absolutely a gift, because it gives you the ability to problem solve, to be creative and be imaginative. And I do think that it also builds on my resilience. So my story starts having left school very early and getting many different experiences in lots of different places. And after about 10, 15 years, just as the dot-com era started, I went into the world of tech. The world of tech for somebody like myself was just so exciting. It was the early days. Amazon had just launched in sort of the early 90s. We hadn't yet got the inventions of what we later build on with the smartphone, and I'll come on to the importance of that in my career. So I worked for organisations that supported retailers. They supported them with the point of sale systems, and it was in the early days of when we started to build loyalty with customers and understand customer journeys, understand customers' buying habits. And that led me to working with IBM, and then I was recruited by IBM when they built their software business, and spent 17 extremely happy years of my life and my career at IBM. And I thank them for the education, for the challenges, for the opportunities. No year was the same. And one thing IBM teaches you is to embrace change. And I really believe in embracing change. And as Jackie sort of alluded, IBM gave me the opportunity. They seconded me as opposed to sort of a sabbatical. So they seconded me into business in the community. I had the massive privilege of working with Julia Cleverden, who is amazing. If you haven't heard her Desert Island Discs, listen to it. She's a super lady. And during my time there, which was really tough, it was just as we hit the banking collapse in 2008. So the financial crisis was hitting. My job was to navigate us through the new equality bill, which was being debated at the time. And it was to ensure that the representation of women and gender equality was absolutely kept to the fore. And as Jackie says, that's where the two of us had the privilege of meeting and have worked together and have kept in contact with each other since. Once I left, finished my secondment with Opportunity Now, I went back to IBM, and I went back to IBM in the role of Corporate Affairs Director, Government Affairs. And that was a phenomenal opportunity for me to represent IBM with the UK government, to work with the bigger parts of IBM across the globe, and actually work on policies that were really important to us and to our people and to our customers. It was at that time that I was privileged to have private health care and took an annual health check. And in 2011, I dutifully went off for my annual checkup. And I vividly remember being in the middle of a sales call, and when they said to me there was a waiting time to have my mammogram, I almost didn't do it. And to this day, I really thank myself for thinking, no, you can be late for some things in this world, and your colleagues and your customers will understand. I did do that mammogram. I got the results of it a couple of weeks later, and being the type of character that I am, I slightly put off going to do the follow-up, which was necessary. They explained to me there'd been a slight problem with the machine and they needed to redo the mammogram. That was possibly their way of saying they thought there was something there and they wanted me to go back. I went back and had the results, and 2011, December 2011, the 19th of December, a day that I will never, ever forget, was the day that I got the Christmas present I didn't put on my Christmas list. And I was diagnosed with stage 3/4 breast cancer. There was no time to wait. This was a time when end of year, which is anyone who's worked in IBM will know that December the 30th, 31st are the busiest times of our calendar year. That had to wait. So off I duly went, saw an oncologist, and before I knew it, I was in the system. The speed was enormous. The shock was really, really stark. I started chemotherapy almost before I knew it. thankfully, I had the most amazing oncologist, a lady called Dr. Marcia Hall, and the two of us had the most frank conversation. We were just coming up to Christmas. I also have a birthday in between Christmas and New Year, and she very much wanted to get me onto a chemotherapy regime very quickly. So we agreed the days that I didn't want to be feeling rubbish, i.e. ideally on my birthday, and also the day that I was taking my mother and my mother-in-law to the carols at the Albert Hall. So the two of us started a very good, open and honest relationship about what needed to be done, and also how we were going to manage through this together. I did start chemotherapy within a week of having my diagnosis. Initially, that was something that I was able to hide. And I say hide because we did not want to share this news with our family over Christmas at all. I had two very young children. They were 9 and 10. It'll make me feel slightly emotional, actually. So the other thing that was really important to me, a lot of this was happening while the boys were on Christmas holidays. And I thought very long and hard about how I could protect my children. And the most important thing to me was to take control of the narrative. And I was very fortunate that I had the experience, the business experience, the ability and to communicate. And so over that Christmas holiday, I crafted it would be wrong to say press release, but a very clear communication that I sent to everybody I knew, and some people I didn't know that well, i.e. parents at school. And I explained to them exactly what I was going through. I also explained to them what I wanted them to be saying when their children came home and said, you know, William's mummy, James's mummy isn't very well, that I was going to get better. It was really important to me that my children believed I was going to get better. And the reason that I say that is because I believed it. I really believed it. And subsequently, I have actually been phoned by mothers from school and from friends who've said, can I have a copy of that? Because I was really impressed when you sent it out. It really helped us understand. And I think the point that I'm making here is that communication is really, really important. And that what we need to appreciate, and it was actually a story I heard from a really good friend of mine who sadly I lost many years ago to leukemia. And I can remember when he was going through the process, he said to me, Sarah, it's not me that's necessarily suffering. It's the people around me. Because I can go to the treatments and I can take the decisions. The people around me who love me and rely on me are the people who are suffering. So that was something that I took into my diagnosis, and I did the very best that I could to communicate to people what was going on. I went through 2012, it might have been an Olympic year in the UK, and it was very exciting, but it was not the best year in my life. I did get to the Olympics. I took my children to see the sort of Super Saturday with Mo Farah and Jessica Ennis-Hill, can't remember. And it was a fabulous day out. But that morning I'd had radiotherapy and I was feeling a bit knackered. But it's amazing the sort of happiness and the upbeatness you can get from doing things with family. And family were the most important thing to me. My children and my husband were the people who got me through it. And bizarrely, my Labrador Digby, because every day I walked with him, and every day he used to lie on the end of my bed. So these things were really important to getting me through. I did get through 2012, by which time I had had 8 doses of chemo. I'd had a double mastectomy. It was an elective double mastectomy. I needed to have one, and I'm very, very fortunate in the medical team that I had around me, who said that I was able to make that decision to go for a double mastectomy. It was the right thing for me. It was supported by my medical team. So we did that, and at the same time, we, again, coming back to where I started, working with my oncologist and working with my surgeon, and later my reconstructive surgeon, we built it around things that were really important to me. I had the opportunity in 2013 to go to South Africa, where one of my boys was playing cricket. And that was really important to me to go to that. I didn't want to miss these opportunities that my children had. Through all of this, I retained my job at IBM. They are a huge and very supportive employer. And whilst I didn't take huge amounts of time off work, every time that I did need to take time off work, they were massively supportive. And to the bosses that I work with, I'm forever grateful. And also to my IBM family, some of which are dear friends and some of which were colleagues. They were massively supportive, and I'll always be grateful for that support. 2013 was a really positive year for me because it was a year of reconstruction. It was the year I met a guy called David Crawford, who is a phenomenal surgeon. And I will never forget the day. I had been extremely fortunate of being chosen to be a model at the breast cancer care.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I think, Jackie, you might have come along and supported me, which was
I did.
absolutely fabulous. And I'll never forget saying to David, David, this is really important, this surgery, because I am going to be on the catwalk and your work is going to be on pretty much on display. So he was fantastic. I had my reconstructive surgery, rebuilt myself. I did take a lot of interest and care in what I was eating. Again, it was part of what I could control. I am a firm believer in introducing sort of juicing and healthy eating. I completely gave up sugar during this time and felt an awful lot better for it. Partly because it was good for my health, but partly because it was something I could control in a time when there was lots of things that were out of my control. 2013 and October 2013, and strutting my stuff down that catwalk was the pinnacle to my recovery. And it was fabulous because it was a room full of amazing support, even people you don't know, everybody. You knew everybody was willing you well. None of us knew what we were doing. We were just as likely to trip over.
You were fabulous.
That's very kind of you, and maybe that's the photo that I will share with you. But it was the purpose of breast cancer care and the fashion show, and having had the opportunity to be part of that committee for several years following taking part in it. It's about building confidence, and it's about showing people that there is sort of life after this. And Jackie will know that I have said this on many occasions, and I'm sharing this with you, but I've got a better figure now than I had before. I love my new boobs. They're fabulous. And I am a believer in looking at the positives. I sort of have a 20-year-old chest in a 4-year-old woman. So that's a blessing. But that was a real rebuild for me. And 2014 was then all about, what do I do now? I have beaten this thing. I did say at the time, it picked the wrong body. It picked the wrong person. I know that many people through their journey with breast cancer will have vastly different experiences. I've had friends who've gone through breast cancer. A dear friend of mine, Miriam, was a brilliant support to me. She had been through it a few years before me and was kind enough to share some of the intimate details, which I won't share with you. But it's almost what I found really important, and I liken it to when I had my children. The importance of an antenatal group is the time and the place. And so having friends around who are able to support you because they have physically been through it was a huge privilege to me, and I will always be grateful for that. But most importantly, to my family and friends. And I think whether it's dealing with cancer, whether it's dealing with any rocks that life throws at us, having a strong family and friends network. I have the most amazing husband. He is my rock. I have 2 brilliant children. And I have a fantastic network of close girlfriends. And that through all sorts of different times, that's what's been really important to me. I did beat this thing. And then come 2014, decided that I would retire. And I took early retirement from IBM, and they were very supportive to that, and they completely understood why I wanted to do that. I wanted to spend more time with my children. That didn't last very long. It quite quickly. I had a dabble with starting my own business, which was about food and healthy living, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Also realised that wasn't really going to be enough for what I wanted to do. And then fortunately, I reconnected with somebody that I had met, and I'd come back to the network. The network is such a strong thing to have. I reconnected with someone that I had met through my days with Opportunity Now. And the rest, they say, as far as my career is possibly history. I decided that having the opportunity to be a founding member of a new bank would be a really exciting thing to do. There were 4 of us around a coffee table at the time that I made that decision. It was a decision that was very exciting. I look back on it now, it was a time when it was really untrendy to be a banker. So I had the privilege of working with an amazing team of people, led by a lady called Anne Bowden, and we built Stalin Bank. And I was there for the first 4.5 years of its journey, and it plays to some real strong values of mine, and that is fair access to financial management for all. And my value for fairness is really important, and it doesn't matter what it is, but I do believe everybody should have the access to being able to, in this case, manage their money, or with other experiences, the ability to access the right healthcare. So we spent 4.5 years building a phenomenal proposition, putting the power of managing your money in the palm of your hand. And the invention of the smartphone, which was around 2010, really had come into its own come 2015, 2016 with the development of apps. Stalin Bank is a completely app-based, phone-based bank. It is your bank in your pocket. It is a new way of banking. It keeps you in contact with your money and in control of your finances, and therefore helps you to manage the stress levels that we all have when we're dealing with finances. I've retired from Stalin Bank. I seem to be the person who retires quite frequently. I retired just over a year ago, and I've done a couple of really, really interesting things since then. I've had the opportunity to be an interim CEO for an international development charity, which was taking funding and providing education to children in suffering greatly in Uganda and Sri Lanka, and that was a huge privilege. And having completed on that contract, I worked alongside, again, an amazing woman. Actually, I think I keep referring to lots of amazing women. An amazing woman called Sasha Romovich, who is leading something called FeForte Finance, which is providing access and sustainable funding to affordable credit. There are millions of people in the UK who are unable to get a standard bank account, and FeForte Finance is looking to provide fair access to affordable credit for people who otherwise would have been subject to loan sharks. So I had the absolute privilege of doing that for 5 or 6 months over the summer through lockdown. And having completed that contract, I've taken some time just to think about what next. And what next looks to be building into a really exciting opportunity for me. So we'll leave on that cliffhanger. But that is my story.
First of all, thank you, Sarah. That was wonderful to hear your the passion around your experience, as well as obviously the critical experience and how you dealt with that was wonderful and inspiring to hear. I think there was a few things for me. I think you touched on them already, but what would you say to someone? You mentioned that you thought about putting it off when you were in that sales call. What would you say to someone who's perhaps listening that is in that situation where they're thinking, I've noticed something, or potentially a test result has come back and they're putting it off? Is there anything that you would specifically say to them?
I would, and that is don't. I was still massively fortunate because I had a private health checkup on an annual basis, and because I had religiously taken that, I had historical information that could be compared with. So I knew that in 2010 I didn't have this or didn't have breast cancer. By 2011 I did, and therefore that gave us the opportunity to understand more about how long I'd had it, how fast it had grown, etc. But my advice to anybody, and especially through Breast Cancer Awareness Month, is make sure you book your checkups. By the way, I do have my checkup book. I do it every October, and will religiously do it every October, because I am now almost 9 years post my diagnosis. I don't come under the national health system, but I think it's worth every penny to get a private checkup if you can afford to do so. So I'd always recommend that people do that, especially as we get into our 50s. I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 46, so it was still quite early. It was before the NHS standard checks, which I believe come in at age 50. So I was fortunate. I just encourage anyone that if they recognise anything that was different. I didn't have any of the signs that anything was wrong. I was just massively fortunate. It was spotted, and it was spotted early, and then I worked with a medical team who just literally whipped through the process to recovery. So I would always say to people, go get checked.
Yeah. You said that you were diagnosed straight away with stage 3, stage 4, which if it obviously was a very fast growing problem, because if you'd been checked the year before and you didn't have it at all, and suddenly it's stage 3, stage 4. I mean, can you talk a bit to your fears at getting that sort of level of diagnosis straight off? It must have hit you like a truck, I would imagine.
It did hit me very, very hard, but that's why I believe I was fortunate with the medical team that I had. The recommendation was to start chemotherapy very quickly, intravenous chemotherapy. I went through all of the things that you would expect. As much as I tried to use the cold cap system, was unbelievably, excruciatingly painful. It didn't work, and I did lose my hair, which for women is a really tough thing to go through. When you are called back and you have the sort of second mammogram, and then you go straight away to have ultrasound, and before you know it, you're having biopsies. It's so quick. It is like being run over by a truck. It's a very quick. For me, it was a very quick decision, and it was, of course, it's something that none of us want. Did I ever in my life think that it might hit me at some stage? I think I was completely in denial. My mother had breast cancer, so there was a high chance of me having it. I never had any BRCA genes testing, but again, coming back to, I was diagnosed relatively early and relatively young in the grand scheme of things. So it just wasn't, my life was too full. I wasn't expecting any of this. I certainly wasn't expecting, as I said, the diagnosis that I got on that day. But for me, the power and my resilience sort of kicked in what I could do about it, in the recommendations that were given to me, and the team that I had around me. I mean, they were just fantastic. They allowed me and encouraged me to talk about what I wanted, I needed. And for me, for that Christmas, I needed normality. And as much as I did have my first chemo on, I think it was the 27th of December, it was something I went off and did with the absolute support of my husband, who kept the kids busy, and my in-laws, who also sort of kept the kids busy. That nobody actually knew where I was going, and that was important to me. So I was still processing it myself, and I think it took me a couple of weeks to process it, and it was just something that, with myself and my husband, we came to terms with. And it wasn't until the new year that we shared any of that with anybody. We really didn't want to dampen anybody's Christmas or anyone's New Year.
No.
And for us, 2012 was a new year, and it was the year we were going to beat it. And we'd had a couple of weeks to work that out, and a couple of weeks to come to terms with it. And so we came out fighting. And that's just my style. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but I am a cup half full, and I do believe in positive thinking. I know that doesn't work for everybody.
Did you do anything like that? Did you do mindfulness training, or get CBT, or some sort of counselling, or anything like that? Or did you use your family and friends? And
I used my own time and walked miles with my dog. We're fortunate, you alluded to before, we're fortunate that we live in the countryside. My husband is a farmer. We have space and countryside. So being outside and being able to think, if that's referred to as being mindful, then yes. But I would take myself off into my own space and process my own thoughts by pounding the footpaths of Hertfordshire.
How did you manage communicating not just to people who you knew sort of your children's friends' parents and your friends and family, but your interface with work. I have a very strong memory. I can remember when you told me, I think we were going to an event in London, and obviously you couldn't make it. I don't know, but you told me. I was getting out of a taxi and it was pouring with rain. And I remember it was like, aren't you coming? And it was like, and you were like, you told me. And you said, I don't want anyone to know right now. And so I imagine it was a Christmas event or something. I don't know. But you said, I don't want loads of phone calls from all the people that know me through my work. I just want to handle this privately first and then sort of explain it later. Can you remember anything, not about our conversation, but can you remember what that was about? What was going on in your head then?
Yeah, it comes back to, I think, something that I said earlier, which is I wanted to take control of the narrative. And the one thing that can be really draining is having to keep updating people.
Yeah.
I don't want to be known as, in my work capacity or my personal capacity, as someone who had breast cancer. I want to be known as a great mother, a great friend, and a great colleague. So it was important to me to protect myself. The family at IBM is a really close family, and really, people call themselves IBMers for a reason. And I knew lots of people would be wishing me well, but with the very best will in the world, all the energy that I had needed to be focused on fighting it and supporting my own immediate children and husband. So it wasn't until I needed to take time off work for surgery, which was the sort of February of 2012, that I explained to people why I was taking time off. And I did the same, or took the same approach, which was I crafted something. I mean, email is a great thing. I crafted an email and I explained to people exactly what was happening, and just said to them that, you know, I would be off the radar. So it's just taking control of that narrative and just realizing where you need to focus your energy. And I needed to focus my energy on beating it.
I remember you sort of cascaded information. I don't know if you did that in all aspects of your life, but you kind of, as I recall, you decided to put out regular updates to certain people. So I was one of them, and you said, "Can you tell all the others and tell them I don't want loads of phone calls?" Did you do that? Was that like did you work out a communication cascade sort of thing, or was it just completely random?
I think having been in a role that where communication is quite important, it most probably was a little bit more planned.
It felt like that, like you were in control.
But it comes back to something that I think I mentioned before. It was my point of control. And for me, that was really important. Really important. So, there was some planning behind it. Just simply going back to the comment that a friend of mine had made to me, it's not easy for those of us going through it. But when we are going through it, we know what's happening. And the people around us, some like to know, some need to know. So the more you can share that in an efficient way that protects your energy, was something that was at the forefront of my thinking when I was going through this. Simply because I didn't have a lot of energy. And as much as loads of people want to be massively supportive, and they were, there were times when you just hole up and you just need to be off the grid, and you're doing that to make sure that you are building your buckets of resilience in the way that you can. You know, the way that you're giving yourself. You know, we talk about having a healthy mind. So those things were important to me, and those things were things that I did for myself. I just tried to control how much energy was needed. It was about focus, and I suppose my career, which has been commercially based, sales targets based, quarterly based, has allowed me to appreciate the value of focus. And during this time, the focus was on beating it.
And Sarah, I think you again alluded to it just then as well, but it sounds like your support network was very, you know, you gave them a lot of instruction in terms of what, you know, the information, what you wanted, and kind of how to support you. Is there anything that people did that was particularly helpful in that time? You mentioned talking to people that had experienced it already. If you haven't had that experience, you know, how can people help someone that may have just got a diagnosis or maybe going through this themselves?
People who had been through it and were prepared to share their story, I did find really helpful, and I was blessed that I had people in my close network that were able to do that for me. So there were people I already knew. I will always be grateful for that. I will always be grateful for a small little army of local mummies who used to just drop off lasagna on the doorstep. You know, and they will know who they are. They weren't people who, they were genuinely, it was a genuine help. It meant that even when I didn't have the energy, I could put something in the oven and feed my children. So those sort of very discreet acts of kindness were absolutely invaluable, totally invaluable, and something that, you know, hopefully I'll get the opportunity to pay back someone in a similar way. Thankfully, I haven't known anybody directly myself since having this that has been through it, but random acts of kindness are just priceless.
Thank you so much for the honesty and the openness and being willing to share this.
And I just, you know, I mean, there were times when I had to sort of swallow a bit. I still find it quite hard. I still find it quite hard, not for me, but the fear that I might have missed my children growing up.
Yeah. Bless you.
So thank goodness that everything, clearly the universe had great plans for you, Sarah, and thank goodness that everything happened the way it did. And, you know, things could have been so different. So as you say, the things to be grateful for now are going to be even more special.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it is such a powerful story, and it was so wonderful to hear you speak it through. I think it's going to, you mentioned about repaying the favour to others. I think other people hearing this, you've already repaid the favour. That's going to be so powerful.
Yeah, you know, I really do believe in all of what we do, and I think women in business, you know, it's so important that we pay it forward. You know, and it works with your health. It works with lots of other things where you can just reach out and provide a little bit of support for somebody. It's a huge privilege to be able to do that for someone. So I think, you know, we pay it forward in whatever we do and whatever experience we've got, we can share. I think it's really important.
Definitely.
Hopefully it's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Sarah.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you so much for listening to our conversation with Sarah Williams Gardner. We hope you found it interesting. Jackie and I certainly did. Whilst there are many takeaways to be had from Sarah's story, we hope that everyone listening will be inspired to regularly check your boobs if you don't already. Around 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer at some point in their lives, and the sooner it's found, the better the survival rate. It's also rare amongst men, but it can still happen. Make an if-then plan to prompt you to do it. Something like, if I'm in the shower, then I will check my breast. And if something doesn't seem normal, then don't put it off. Please visit a medical professional as soon as you can. Another wonderful lesson from Sarah for any stressful situation is to focus on what you can control. Feeling out of control is one of our core existential fears and can be a trigger for us. Like with Sarah's communication plan, when you're feeling stressed or overcoming challenges, focus on the areas that you can control. And be kind to yourself. Sarah mentioned keeping her body and mind healthy and using those long walks with her lovely dog Digby to restore her buckets of resilience. To learn more about if-then plans, your core existential fears and how to overcome them, and how to keep your brain in tip-top condition ready to overcome challenges, please join us on our next training program. We'd love to meet you. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you again very soon.